Here's your story in a reusable writing block. My daughter-in-law said, "You only get leftovers." She had no idea who owned the house. You only get leftovers. The words landed harder than any slap. For a moment, I simply stood there in the kitchen doorway, holding a tray of freshly baked dinner rolls. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air. Laughter echoed from the dining room where my son, daughter-in-law, and their guests were already seated around the long oak table. Nobody looked at me, nobody except my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. She folded her arms and smiled. "The main dinner is for our guests. There's some food left in the kitchen after everyone finishes." The room suddenly became very quiet. My son, Ethan, glanced up from his plate. "Vanessa," she waved him off. "What? We're already out of seats." I looked toward the dining table. There were 2 empty chairs. One belonged to me, the other belonged to my late husband. The chair had remained empty for 3 years. Nobody said a word. I slowly placed the rolls on the counter. "That's okay," I said softly. "I'll eat later." Vanessa nodded as though she had solved a minor inconvenience. "Perfect." I turned away before anyone could see the hurt in my eyes. The strange thing wasn't what she said. It was that this wasn't the first time. Small comments, little exclusions, subtle reminders that I was becoming an outsider in my own home. At least, that's what Vanessa believed. She had no idea who actually owned the house. And I never corrected her. Not once. Because after my husband, Robert, passed away, I had made a promise to myself. I would never use money to control family. Love shouldn't come with conditions. Respect shouldn't be purchased. So I stayed quiet, even when it hurt. The house itself sat on nearly 6 acres outside Portland. It was beautiful. White stone exterior, large wraparound porch, towering maple trees, the kind of property people slowed down to admire. Robert and I bought it 40 years earlier when we had almost nothing. Back then, it was a fixer-upper. The roof leaked. The plumbing barely worked. The heating system was ancient. We spent years restoring it ourselves. Every wall held memories. Every room carried a story. When Robert died, ownership transferred entirely to me. His will was crystal clear. The property belonged to me alone. Ethan knew that. Vanessa apparently didn't. Or perhaps she assumed inheritance had already happened. Either way, she behaved as though the house was hers. Over time, she began making changes. New furniture, new decorations, new rules. At first, I welcomed her enthusiasm. She was family. I wanted her to feel comfortable. Then things started shifting. One afternoon, I returned from grocery shopping and discovered my favorite reading chair gone. "Where is it?" I asked. Vanessa barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, I donated it." I stared. My chair. It looked old. Robert had built that chair by hand. The realization hit me like a punch. Still, I said nothing. Weeks later, family photos disappeared from several walls. Pictures of Robert, pictures of Ethan growing up, pictures from holidays and anniversaries. Vanessa replaced them with modern artwork. More contemporary, she explained. I quietly collected the photographs from storage boxes and placed them in my bedroom. Again, I stayed silent. Ethan remained mostly unaware. He worked long hours as an engineer and often returned home exhausted. Whenever I considered speaking up, I convinced myself things would improve. Family needed patience. At least that's what I believed. Then came Thanksgiving. The leftovers comment wasn't really about food. It was about belonging. And for the first time, I wondered whether I still belonged at all. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the back porch. The autumn air felt cold against my skin. I looked toward the old barn where Robert and I had spent countless weekends restoring antique furniture. A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mom." Ethan stepped outside. He sat beside me. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Of course. You left dinner early." I was tired. He studied me carefully. For a moment, I thought he knew. Then his phone buzzed. "Work." He apologized and hurried back inside. The conversation ended before it began. Winter arrived. Christmas decorations filled the house. Vanessa organized a massive holiday party. Nearly 80 guests attended. Neighbors, coworkers, friends, business associates. The house glowed with lights. Music drifted through every room. Everyone praised Vanessa for hosting such an incredible event. Late in the evening, I overheard a conversation that stopped me cold. A guest complimented the property. Vanessa smiled proudly. "It's a wonderful house." Then she laughed. "Honestly, Ethan and I will probably renovate most of it once it's officially ours." The guest nodded. "Any plans for his mother?" Vanessa shrugged. "We'll probably find her a nice retirement community eventually." My chest tightened. The words weren't cruel because they were shouted. They were cruel because they were casual. As if my future had already been decided. As if I were furniture waiting to be relocated. For the first time, I felt something change inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Clarity. The following week, I met with my attorney. A kind woman named Margaret who had handled our family's legal affairs for years. She listened quietly. Then she asked a simple question. "What do you want?" I thought about it carefully. "I want peace." Margaret smiled. "Then let's make sure your wishes are protected." We reviewed everything. Ownership records, trust documents, estate plans, future arrangements. For the first time in years, I felt secure. Months passed. Spring arrived. Then summer. One morning, an unexpected phone call changed everything. My younger sister, Helen, suffered a serious medical emergency. She lived alone in another state. Recovery would take months, possibly longer. Without hesitation, I traveled to help her. Family came first. I spent nearly 4 months caring for her. Doctor appointments, physical therapy, daily support. The work was exhausting, but she needed me. Eventually, Helen recovered. When I returned home, something felt different. Several locks had been changed. I assumed it was a security update. Inside, more changes waited. My bedroom furniture had been moved. Personal belongings were boxed. Closets reorganized. Family heirlooms relocated. Vanessa greeted me cheerfully. "We converted part of the house while you were away." I stared. "You converted my room?" "Well, technically it's a guest suite now." I struggled to process what I was hearing. "My room? You weren't using all that space." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I noticed something else. The master bedroom. Robert's and my bedroom. The room we'd shared for decades. Vanessa and Ethan had moved into it. Without asking. Without discussing it. Without a single conversation. That night, I sat alone in what used to be a guest room. For the first time since Robert died, I cried. Not because of the room. Not because of the furniture. Because I suddenly realized I had spent years protecting relationships that only I was protecting. The next morning, I made a decision. A week later, invitations arrived. Family gathering. Sunday afternoon. Everyone was encouraged to attend. Ethan seemed confused. "What's the occasion?" "You'll see," I replied. By Sunday, nearly 20 relatives filled the living room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. Vanessa looked delighted. She probably assumed it was another celebration. At precisely 2 o'clock, Margaret arrived carrying several folders. Vanessa's smile faded. My attorney wasn't exactly a party guest. I stood near the fireplace. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from emotion. "Thank you all for coming." The room quieted. "I wanted everyone here because this house has always been about family." People nodded. I continued. "For 40 years, Robert and I built a life within these walls." My eyes drifted toward old photographs displayed nearby. Every sacrifice we made helped create this home. Vanessa exchanged a confused glance with Ethan. Margaret stepped forward. She opened one folder. Inside were ownership documents, property records, legal filings, the official deed. She handed copies to Ethan. His expression changed immediately. "Mom." I nodded gently. "Yes." The room remained silent. Vanessa looked from page to page. Then back at me. Then back to the documents. Color drained from her face. "You own everything." The question hung in the air. Not because of the answer. Because of the realization behind it. I had never been living with them. They had been living with me. For years. The room felt frozen. Ethan looked stunned. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I smiled sadly. "Because I didn't think I needed to." Nobody spoke. Finally Vanessa whispered something barely audible. "I didn't know." "No," I said softly. "You didn't." Then something unexpected happened. I wasn't interested in humiliation. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't interested in winning. Instead, I shared what I had really gathered everyone to announce. Several months earlier, while helping my sister recover, I had visited a community center serving struggling families. The center desperately needed support, funding, housing assistance, educational programs, resources. They were helping hundreds of people. Many were seniors with nowhere else to go. Others were single parents trying to rebuild their lives. Their work reminded me of Robert. His generosity, his belief that a home should help people, not just shelter them. The room listened carefully. I took a deep breath. Part of this property is being transferred into a charitable housing trust. Several relatives gasped. Vanessa looked shocked. Ethan blinked repeatedly. Margaret explained the details. The unused guest cottages, additional acreage, future development plans, affordable housing initiatives, community support programs. Everything had already been arranged. Years of planning, months of preparation. The trust would help families for decades. Silence filled the room. Then Ethan stood. His eyes were wet. Dad would have loved this. I smiled. Yes. For the first time in years, I saw the little boy I had raised. Not the overwhelmed adult, not the distracted professional, just my son. Vanessa remained quiet, very quiet. Hours later, after everyone left, she knocked on my door. The same door leading to the room she had reassigned. I invited her inside. She looked different, not defensive, not proud, just vulnerable. Tears filled her eyes. I owe you an apology. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she continued. When I moved here, I thought I had to prove myself. I listened. I kept trying to create the perfect life. Her voice cracked, and somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people. The honesty surprised me. She wiped her eyes. I hurt you. I nodded. Yes. More tears followed. I can't change that. No. But I wish I could. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she noticed one of Robert's old photographs sitting beside my bed. She picked it up carefully. Tell me about him. The request caught me off guard. So I did. For the next 2 hours, we talked. Really talked. About Robert. About family. About mistakes. About grief. About fear. Outside, the evening sun settled behind the maple trees. Inside, walls that had taken years to build slowly began coming down. And for the first time since she joined the family, Vanessa stopped acting like she owned the house. She started learning what it truly meant to belong there.